First, we have to shrink down a little bit because, as we know now,
little brown.
they're the little brown bats.
They're teeny.
And the little brown bats. But we have the big fruit bats, which are yay big. And we have, what kind of bats were there that were bigger than that? With you mentioned
That's
something.
That's about the biggest, I believe, is the big fruit bats.
Okay.
They can get pretty good size. And those are the ones you see in the horror movies, flying and people running and screaming. But again, they eat fruit. They want no part of biting anybody.
Welcome to Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. We're continuing our discussion about, as you may have guessed, bats. We'll introduce ourselves, and then we'll get to it. I'm David Stevenson.
I'm Bob Perez.
And I'm Gretchen Cosgrove.
All righty, so bats. Back to bats. What fascinates us about bats, and what about them do we believe that is just plain old not correct?
There are lots of things. The most being they are not flying rodents. That's the biggest thing I want to stress about bats. They are not rodents. But I've got a little list here of bat facts, so let's go through them.
Go ahead, and we'll jump in and ask you if we need a little clarification. Bob and I will jump right in.
Okay. In general, bats are not dangerous. Like other mammals, they can carry rabies, although less than 1% of all bats become infected with rabies. You are more apt to get rabies from feral cats.
Feral cats?
Absolutely.
In other words, wild cats.
Wild cats. Wild cats have given rabies to more people than raccoons, bats, and every other wild animal combined. Most bites and people that come down with rabies have gotten it from a feral cat because people think it's a cat. It's not. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
You would think twice before most people would reach out and touch a bat.
Yeah, it's not one of those crazy bats. It's just a cat.
It's just a cat.
Oh.
Yeah. Kitty, meow, cat bites you.
Yep.
And whether you think it's got rabies or not, you will go through the whole process as if it did. Once you get rabies, once it is confirmed you have rabies, you will die from rabies.
Wow.
Rabies is not a curable disease once it has taken over your body.
So the injections don't work? You have to get the injections before you're confirmed?
You get those if you... I won't handle a bat in my hands without being protected because their teeth are not big enough to draw blood, but they could still scratch you and they could still bite you. So you always want to protect yourself handling any wild animal.
Now these cats, if you have a feral cat, you don't know who it is, it doesn't have a collar on, and it scratches you or bites you, you should have the rabies inoculations as a precaution?
I would. I absolutely would.
And those are very painful, as I understand. It's a large needle.
They're not as bad as they used to be. We had an incident at our house where we had a little brown bat hanging on a stump that was on our deck.
Yeah.
My neighbor came over. They were looking at it. I walked in my house. I walked out to find the kid with the bat in its hand.
Yeah.
Father let it.
Which you probably shouldn't do because it's a wild animal.
Absolutely not. So he was handling this bat. I found the bat dead 2 days later. We took the bat, had it tested. Sure enough, it tested positive for rabies. This child and his father, because they both handled it without any gloves, had to have it, even though it hadn't bitten them. But you would never know. Their little claws are so tiny.
So like
they
a little splinter.
Absolutely. Could have scratched you and you didn't know it. So they went through this series of shots, not in the stomach as it used to be. I think you get one, the rest are given in the arm over a course of time, and it wasn't terrible. So
they were fine, though, after
they were absolutely fine.
So with a feral cat, which as you say is much more likely to carry rabies than a bat, much more likely to transmit rabies to humans than bats, raccoons, and everything else around.
Correct.
If you're bitten by a cat that you don't know who that cat is, you should go ahead and, as a precaution, get the rabies shot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Better to be safe than sorry.
And if you can, catch the cat so that it could be tested to find out if it has rabies, to confirm that you're getting the rabies shots for a good purpose.
Correct. But the only way to test it is to kill the animal.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
Are there statistics comparing the rate of rabies in, say, feral cats versus bats? Is there a 10-to-1 ratio, or?
Less than that.
Okay.
There were about 50 confirmed cases of rabies in the country last year. 83% of them were from feral cats.
Wow.
The others were from
40 plus out
raccoons,
of 50. Yeah.
or I think maybe less than 1% was from a bat. So that's pretty big.
It sure is.
And I've heard a lot about raccoons, because, well, was it an old yeller that had the rabies? Oh, gosh, I'm dating myself now.
That makes you older than me. I don't know.
They gave the bit old yeller. Oh, I guess it might have been a raccoon.
Might have been a raccoon.
I think it was a raccoon that bit old yeller, and little Timmy, I'll call him, I forget his name, had to shoot his own dog because the dog started to exhibit the signs of rabies, the foaming at the mouth and the anger, and he had it was one of the saddest movies I've ever seen. But
and once you exhibit signs, it's too late.
You're dead.
Wow.
It will kill you.
Yeah.
So
what other statistics do you have there?
We also, bats do not get caught in people's hair. We had discussed that. If they're flying close to you, you have bugs around you. They're coming to get them.
Oh, so if you've got lice in your hair, then they'll come by?
Probably not lice, but the little flying gnats or
gnats and
things
whatnot.
like that.
Mosquitoes.
That's what they're after.
Okay.
Their sonar is so good, they're not going to hit you.
And if your hair gets in the way, your hair gets in the way. Okay.
It just so happens. But just stand still. They'll just let go and off they'll go.
Yeah.
We had talked about they'll eat about 1,200 mosquitoes in an hour's time. Big thing.
Yeah.
There are about 1,000 different species of bats in the world. As again, I said it, there's only about 8 species found in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Only 3 species of bat. Oh, I take that back. I thought it was 4. It's 3 species of bat that feed on animal blood. The vampire bats prefer to drink cattle blood, and they're found in Latin America.
Yeah.
The smallest bat is as small as a mouse. It's very, very tiny.
Yeah.
And a fruit eater has about a 6-foot wingspan, as we just talked.
Yeah.
So that I think
big.
might be a
would be
little intimidating.
Yeah.
I guess.
You see a big
Here
bat.
comes Bela Lugosi. Look out.
I like your blood.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they have a varied diet. 70% of bats eat insects. Many tropical species eat fruit or drink flower nectar, as we had talked about.
Yep.
And some bats, again, as we had talked, eat fish and little frogs and things like that. So, but they're great little creatures to have around. And I know that when our colony was big, we could sit on our deck at night. There were not a lot of problems on my deck with mosquitoes.
You didn't have to light any of those citronella candles?
None.
Or
I hate those
spray
citronella
yourself
candles.
with the...
none.
I hate that spray stuff. I'd
Yeah.
much rather have bats flying around taking care of the
Absolutely.
insects.
Exactly. They do a much better job. And
No.
it was fun, too, because when we can sit on our deck and just watch them come out. So we always have company over, and we'll take them out
Like
there.
your own little nature show.
Exactly. It is.
What a great show.
And they're wonderful to watch. And what a lot of people don't know either, too, is that bats cannot fly like birds. They cannot just take off from the ground. They actually have to drop and then swoop to get air. So if you see a bat on the ground, it's crawling to find its way up something. Same thing if you find...
In order to let gravity get it started.
Correct.
So they can climb.
They're very
using
good
their-
climbers.
And you said they have arms and
hands. Just like we do. Opposing thumbs.
They have opposable thumbs?
Absolutely.
So they're
if
really
you look
related
at a bat,
to like the chimpanzees and
Correct.
gorillas and things like that with the opposable thumbs.
if you look on a picture of a bat, you will see that the membrane in their whole, you can count all 5 of their fingers. So, and same thing we tell people, if you find a baby bat, leave it. Leave it outside, put it up someplace high.
Yeah.
If it's cool out at night, fill up a bottle of water, warm water, and put it next to it. Put it up somewhere high where mom can come in and get it. And pick it up, and then she's got a place to drop and get some air under her wings. And that's how you can tell bats at night, too. They always have to be flapping their wings. They do not soar like birds do.
They don't
So
glide.
that's
They're
correct.
flapping. Okay.
So they're constantly
Now,
flapping.
of course, my cats Basil and Lilith do claim, and I guess they're lying when they claim this, that they claim they have opposable thumbs. Just saying what they claim. Cats don't have opposable thumbs?
No.
Basil
They have a
and
lot of
Lilith,
sharp claws.
You're in trouble.
You mentioned earlier that the farmers are seeing an effect. How is the connection with the bats and the farmers and the
Pollinating their crops at night. Fruit trees, the bats come in to feed on the fruit and the nectars, and so it's causing such a biodiversity in Connecticut that it's to the point now it's getting serious. The farmers are noticing the drop in the production of crops, and it's because of the bats.
and what's
We've had
being
trouble with our
done?
bee population too, apparently, nationwide. Some very serious issues with bees, which of course are people actually take colonies of bees from farm to farm, let the bees out, the bees do the pollination, they come back to the hives, they put them back in the truck, they take them to the next farm.
Correct.
So, but bees have had some serious issues in recent years too.
So imagine we're getting hit during the day because of the bees. We're getting hit even harder at night because of the bats.
Is anything being done to find a cure and to create perhaps a wider awareness?
That's what we're hoping to try to do with shows like these, to make people aware of how bad it has gotten with the bats. The DEP, as far as they're concerned, cave bats are gone in the state of Connecticut. That's how serious this is.
When you say gone, you mean
They're dead.
at zero.
Zero. Except for the little colonies that they're finding in different places, like at my
like
house.
At your house.
But the drop in the numbers at my house it makes me sad.
You mentioned 63 at the peak, down to 11 now?
11. That's been our count this year is 11. That's our highest count.
Anybody who wanted to try and create an environment in their home wouldn't be able to do it at this point because they're gone, or is there a way to bring in from other perhaps states or?
I don't know how to actually attract them. They've kind of attracted us and come to live. My husband built a beautiful bat house. We painted it the right color. We put it in the right direction. We put it at the right height. It's been hanging there for 9 years. They still go to the bees take it over. And we chase them every year. And they go back to the attic. They've got a good home there. They're not about to leave it. So once they find a good home, they're good. They'll stay there and enjoy
with your colony.
How do you build? What exactly does a bat house look like, and how do you build one?
It's thin. It's probably about 4 inches wide. It's probably 2.5 feet tall. You put a nice slanted roof on it, put a little ventilation underneath so that it's got vent. We put screening inside of it. They need something to hang on. You have to put it at a right height so that they can swoop in and climb up, and that predators can't get to it. They love south facing because it's warm during the day, or warm at night and cooler in the mornings and stuff. In our attic, when it gets in the heat of the summer, they show up at our house right around the end of March is when they start showing up, and they're usually gone. If we kept it warm enough for them up there, they would stay there. But because it gets a little cold, they will take off to go to their cave. And they leave right about now is when they're taking off to go find warmer spaces. So
they migrate south?
It depends on the bat, but most of them will go a little south to find their caves. I know even here, I'm sure that the caves here must be warm enough because a lot of them will stay right around here also.
And we know caves are kind of like our own basements, where they're essentially cool during the summer, and they don't really cool off a whole lot during the winter.
Correct. They'll stay warm enough for them.
About 50 degrees.
Correct.
Pretty much year round.
And that's the problem with this fungus. It likes the cold.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So they were hoping that it would kill it off, but it didn't. And I know that they've actually, I believe, but I'm not positive, it was the cave in Southbury. They actually took 100 little bats out and washed them with the fungicide while they were hibernating last year to see if that wouldn't help them.
Did it?
We don't know yet. They're still in the process of waiting to see. But we can't wash the whole cave out with the fungicide.
Yeah.
That's just going to throw the whole ecosystem
out of...
Correct.
You'd be killing other species
that may be
which are
beneficial.
Also important, yeah.
So everybody is kind of at a standstill. They're working so hard to try and figure it out because it's so bad. I mean, we're losing them.
The widespread effect that it will have if they're...
all over the country.
Well, with
We're
Connecticut
seeing
still
it
being
everywhere.
still having a fair amount of agriculture. Right. Certainly bats are an important part of our ecology, and also with Connecticut, we don't want Connecticut to become the mosquito state either.
Exactly.
Yeah, really.
There's enough problems with all the mosquitoes as it is, so never mind having that many more. So it's, I mean, some places don't want the bats. If they get into your attic, obviously you don't want to be walking through inches worth of guano. And so, when they become a nuisance to you, there's lots of ways to get rid of them.
How do you keep them out?
Once they're there, you don't want to bother them once you find them in the summertime, especially if it's new to the summer and mom's got all their babies.
Yeah.
But once they leave, you can force them out. Put in bright lights. They don't like bright lights. Light your attic up. Cool it off.
Yeah.
So that you put up a fan so that it'll keep it cooler than they like it. But once they leave and go to their hibernating caves, then you can close off, find out where they're getting in and out of, close it off. There are, I forget what they call them, but it almost looks like a netting. The bat can get out, but then the net hangs so they cannot get back in.
So one-way...
It's a one-way door.
Okay.
And once they go out, they'll find another place, they'll find another cave, they'll find another spot.
Yeah.
Are there any noises that scare them, or types of music? Or?
Not really.
No.
We've been up there talking to them, taking pictures, and they kind of just look at us like, really, again with the camera. They as long as you're not bothering them, they stay around.
Or trying to grab and touch and...
Correct. We don't do that.
Right.
We give them their space, and so we just pretty much but we could get this close to them, and they'll kind of look at us and check us out, but now they're so used to us, it's like, Gretchen and Dennis are here again to take pictures, smile. But there are ways to keep them out. People say, hang mothballs. That's only going to work for a couple of days, and then they're going to go, okay, we're used to the mothballs now, and they're going to come back.
So they are pretty adaptable to a lot of different things, just as you mentioned. They don't like the light.
Right.
They obviously don't like this fungus that we've talked about. And you did mention, I think, at the Garden Club meeting, something about it spreading from the east westwardly.
Correct.
And there are things that people are doing, that State Department of Environmental Protections for different states are doing to keep that fungus from spreading westbound in America. What are they doing?
At this point, everybody's hands are pretty much tied because we don't know what to do. We don't know how to stop it. They're doing every laboratory, I'm sure, that they can, and every nature center, and the nature centers are being very careful with the bats in and out. They don't want it to spread to their bats that are there for their life.
Sure.
So they are trying everything they can think of, and the labs are trying everything they can think of, but it is just unstoppable right now.
What can the listening audience do to help the cause, to perhaps report? Is there a number that they can call, or? They
can go to the Connecticut Department of Wildlife and go they've got a website that probably would have been nice to bring. They can go right there and they can
find it. They can Google it.
They can Google it, and if you see a colony anywhere around your house, let them know. They can come count them. They're taking banding. They're doing everything they can to follow these bats to see what's happening. So they can call. If you see a bat flying around your yard, they're not interested in a bat because it has not this white nose syndrome has not affected the tree bats. So they know that the fungus is being...
Strictly for the cave bats.
Absolutely.
So the tree bats and the cave bats in size, are they similar in size?
They are.
Okay, so how do you distinguish your tree bat from your cave bat? Is it simply by the color?
It's really hard to distinguish the difference, and it's not like you can look up in the trees and see the bats. They're very well adapted to hiding in the trees.
And they're very fast.
And they're very fast. So typically when you see 1 or 2 bats flying in your yard, that's probably a tree bat. I know when our cave bats come out when they're coming out at night, they come out in groups.
Mm-hmm.
It's
like
almost
they did in the Goonies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not quite that compact,
Intense,
but they come out, usually it's like 1, 2. 1, 2.
Okay.
So
they come out like...
They truly are a colony then. They truly are an extended family or an extended a social group.
They are.
Mm-hmm.
That always come home to the same cave or attic or wherever or if you put one of those houses out, sometimes I guess come home to those houses.
They do, and once you get a colony started, they will, as long as you give them what they want, they will come back.
And then they'll take care of your mosquitoes for you.
They will. Our bats have been, like I said, we've been doing this for years now, and they just keep coming back. And we've even talked about making it so that they will stay and not go back to the cave, hoping that that will stop the spread. They won't go back and end up with the fungus and die.
But then you're changing their age-old lifestyle.
Not really, because if they find the only reason they leave our place now is it gets a little too cold for them.
Okay.
Where if we made it a little warmer, they would probably stay and spend the winter there with us.
Now, could that be a way to? You said you went from 63 in your colony down to 11. At this point, are you considering making it more habitable for them, the 11 that you have?
That's what I would like to do.
Okay.
So that would I'm not sure how we do. I talk with a woman, Jen, at the DEP all the time. We're in constant contact because we actually send in paperwork where we've counted, how we've counted wind, time, temperature, wind,
That's
everything.
a lot of intense work you've
It's
done.
a lot of work to just keep account of them, but it's worth every night we spend out there watching them. It's worth it to me because I know what they do for our world, and we need them.
That's great.
I'm presuming because you mentioned that there's still bats living in your attic that the fungus is not there.
The fungus is not, they don't actually get into my attic. Mm-hmm. They just go under that little slat and hang on the screen that's the vent into the attic.
Okay.
It's like a little window.
So they're not in your attic.
Correct. Okay. They are not in the attic.
Okay. So
and when we come through our attic and walk right up to the window, and that's where we say cheese and get all the great pictures.
So the fungus is not there under the eaves.
Correct. It's not there. They know it's in the caves. That much they do know. They just don't know how now to kill it, get rid of it, stop it. They don't know.
Have you done anything with now the new media, social media that we have? Have you done anything to post them on, say, Facebook and write about the situation?
There's lots of information online about them. It's everywhere because they want people to stop saying, "Oh, they're rats. Let them die. Let them die. Let them." That's not the case. It's funny because one of our garden club members called my husband and I up a couple of weeks ago and, Gretchen, there's a bat in my house. There's a bat in my house. So we went over to her house and we started looking for this bat, and we literally looked through every picture. We looked everywhere. And I said, Susan, we cannot find it. We spent several hours there looking. And the next day she called me to say, Gretchen, we were sleeping last night and I heard, and it was in my house again. So we had told her, if you get it, close the door, open the window, it will find its way, easily find its way out. Yeah. So she woke her husband, and he was brave enough and got up and opened the window, and sure enough, just like we told her, out he went. Cool. One little saved bat. Susan was happy. I was happy. It was a saved little bat. And
There you go.
Now, if a bird finds its way into your house through an open window or open door, I guess you do the same thing.
Absolutely. And it's just that easy to get the bat out. You know, don't take a club to it,
Beat
just
it.
and
Yeah,
kill
which
it because it's
unnecessary.
unnecessary.
They just inadvertently
Exactly.
found their way in.
Through a crack in a wall, through the chimney. They
Okay.
definitely find ways into a house. Open a window, they will find their way right out of the
because
house.
squirrels do find their way down chimneys into
Yes.
homes too.
And the bats do the same thing. And they don't want to be in there any more than you want them there.
No.
Because they have no access to water, no access to food, unless your house has got lots of flying bugs. They're going to starve to death or run out of water. And so just open a window. They'll be more than happy to see you later, bye.
Give them what they want and let them out.
Absolutely. They'll be gone. But people need to know that we need them. They're very good little creatures. They're mammals. And if you could just see that little tiny baby and that little fuzz on them, oh, how could you not love that little face?
Wrap us up now. We've come down to the last couple of minutes. Anything you want to add about bats or reinforce about bats that we've already talked about? Anything? Highlight the most important things that we need to know as a society about bats.
The most important, they are not rodents. They are mammals. They eat lots of bugs. They are good for our environment. They are good for the farms. They pollinate. In the fruit-bearing states, without the bats, we wouldn't have fruit because they are the pollinators, not the bees, not the birds. It's the bats at night.
So a state like California, I would imagine, would have a very large bat population because that's the breadbasket of America now.
They would. They would have I hope they have a large population. But with this white nose syndrome disease that the bats are getting, that is definitely changing. My father lives in Texas, and there's a bridge in Texas, I always forget the name of it. They have a colony of about 30,000 bats.
Wow. 30,000.
Had. People actually go to this bridge to see the bats emerge every night. It is such an incredible sight to see. Thousands and thousands of these bats are now dead. They are counting less than 1,000 bats there now.
From 30,000.
From 30,000.
Wow, down 97%.
Exactly.
Devastation.
Now, Carlsbad Caverns, which I've been to a couple of times with my son Colby, Carlsbad is known. People will go there just to be there at sunset when the bats come out of the cave, just to watch this incredible spectacle of literally, I guess, in a cave the size of Carlsbad, probably literally millions of bats coming out to gather up the insects that they gather up. It's an incredible scene.
That would be a great place to go now and see the difference in the number of bats
to see
that
if
are
it's
coming out.
affected Carlsbad.
Oh, it's absolutely affected it. It's affected every cave in Connecticut, this disease.
What do you think it's going to take to raise the awareness on a total national level where things will be done to help?
When our farmers start screaming. It's going to take our farmers screaming loud enough and the price of food going ridiculously crazy for people to stop and take notice. And by then it may be too late.
And with that, we're going to have to end our second show. And thank you very much for joining us, Gretchen.
Thank you, David.
And co-host Bob Perez.
Thanks.
And good night from Progressive Soup.